Hey everyone, this is the Hot Revenge community. Ready to listen to a new hot story? Then get comfortable and we're starting. It was 11 p.m. My phone lit up with a text message. It was a group thread started by my dad. The message stated we had reached an agreement. Dustin and Chloe would officially move into the family home. He suggested I should finally relax. My mother quickly responded to the text, adding a small red heart emoji. The air in the room suddenly felt suffocating. I started reviewing my bank statements as if they were a detailed ledger. Expenses for taxes, the roof repairs, utilities, all the quiet funds that kept everything functioning. Reading line after line, the truth hit me hard. In this family structure, I was no longer a daughter. I was merely an account they had chosen to close. Have you ever been completely abandoned by the very people you constantly supported? Tell me where you are reading this from. I want to know how far this account travels. I didn't shed a tear. I didn't question their decision. I simply opened my laptop. The cold, precise light of the screen was perfect for the task ahead. I canceled the mortgage autopay, canceled the property insurance, and shut down the electric and water payment plans. Each click felt like severing a tight, restricting cable I had lived with for years. By midnight, their essential support structure had vanished. My anger wasn't loud or explosive this time. It was sharp and meticulous, like balancing a financial spreadsheet. Every single expense was now a painful realization. I had been the silent, primary investor in their vision of family. Tonight, I was getting out. Once the final confirmation email pinged into my inbox, I leaned back and observed my empty apartment. It smelled of lukewarm coffee and unfinished paint jobs. My heart felt fragile, like glass, but finally it was clear and transparent. The next morning, the sun streamed through the blinds I hadn't gotten around to hanging yet. I quickly packed a large duffel bag with necessities, my laptop, passport, 3 clean shirts, and a resilient houseplant that had somehow survived all my moves. I loaded everything into the car. The drive into the city was eerily quiet. They hadn't called yet. Maybe they were still asleep in the house that I had made sure remained warm. Perhaps they were about to wake up and learn exactly how that warmth was sustained. The new apartment was modest, a small 1-bedroom unit with high ceilings. It was quiet enough that I could clearly hear myself think. I placed the plant by the window and watched the light reflect softly on the hardwood floor. It wasn't home yet, but it was definitively mine. My friend Maya appeared unexpectedly that afternoon, bringing an equal mix of coffee and sharp wit. "You look like someone who just finished pulling off a major heist," she observed. "Maybe I did," I replied, "but the only thing I stole back was myself." She laughed, then her expression turned serious as she examined me. "Are you really okay?" "I'm not destroyed," I stated. "I'm simply restructuring the books." We settled onto the floor, surrounded by stacked moving boxes. My hands trembled slightly as I took the coffee cup. The sting of betrayal was still there, but beneath it was a sharper sensation, clarity. "I always believed loyalty was the ultimate virtue," I told her. "It turns out that only holds true when the loyalty is mutual." Maya nodded slowly. "So what's next?" "I rebuild," I responded, "starting from zero. No outstanding debts, no invisible obligations, just solid structure that can actually stand on its own." She offered a slow, proud smile. "You were always much better at architecture than managing emotions." "Yeah," I half smiled back. "But maybe this time I'll manage to design both correctly, right?" The day faded into peaceful silence. I unpacked a single box, finding my framed degree, the proof of the years I spent trying to justify myself. Every object I set down was a quiet declaration. I no longer owe them anything. Outside, the city hummed its existence, anonymous, indifferent, and honest. I stood by the window, my coffee cooling in my hand, watching the light change. For the first time in many years, nobody relied on me, and that profound silence felt like peace. I used to believe that love was built like a physical house, layered, patient, and completely secure if you only kept fixing the flaws. But looking back, all I see now is the scaffolding that only I erected. After I moved into my place, the nights felt distinctly different. Silence can be far louder than any argument. Every creak in the floor sounded like the past demanding payment. I often opened my laptop, needing to look at the records of what I had paid for: the new roof, the entire heating system, the water utility bills stacked up like indisputable proof of my dedication. My father used to say, "You're the dependable one, Diana. I can always count on you." I thought he meant it as a compliment. Now I understand it was merely permission to drain me completely dry. Dustin would frequently visit, never contributing anything, always full of elaborate excuses. Every investment idea he pursued fell apart faster than the one before. There was an application that never launched, a mobile food truck venture that never left the driveway, and a cryptocurrency scheme that ended with tears and a new loan taken out in my name. Yet my dad still called him a visionary. When I had to repair a burst pipe at 2 a.m., no one even noticed. When Dustin purchased a brand new, expensive smartwatch, they celebrated his success as if he had miraculously solved poverty. The memory that truly causes pain isn't a loud confrontation, it's a soft whisper. My mother, leaning over the kitchen sink after dinner, murmuring, "You are so strong, honey. Not everyone is meant to shine brightly. Some of us are here to hold everything together." I accepted that back then, proud to be the binding agent. I never realized that glue eventually gets completely used up. Years passed like that, my income funneled directly into maintaining their reality. I was the solid foundation beneath their consistently collapsing walls. I convinced myself that this was the true meaning of family. It wasn't about affection, it was just plain logistics. There is a specific type of exhaustion that simply doesn't disappear with sleep. It settles into your bones like curring concrete. You start to confuse sheer survival with moral virtue, and exhaustion becomes the evidence that you truly matter. This is the unseen burden of the devoted caretaker. It's how people convinced to care for others start believing that suffering is their true purpose. I wore that burden like a heavy chain for so long it began to feel like precious jewelry. Every single sacrifice seemed noble, until the evening they tossed me aside. Now, when I recall that night, I can almost appreciate the painful symmetry. After years of supporting them, they freed me by completely erasing my existence. I didn't lose my family. I simply closed a financial account that had been catastrophically overdrawn for far too long. Sometimes I scroll through old photographs, the family standing proudly in front of the house. Dad smiling broadly, Dustin pretending he was helping to paint the porch. My mother clutching her necklace, acting as if she had personally constructed the walls. I used to see genuine love in that scene. Now, I only see a costly project I financed entirely without ever being allowed to sign the foundational blueprints. It's strange how overwhelming clarity feels like fresh oxygen after you've existed solely on smoke. I am not angry anymore. I just finally grasped the situation. They never intentionally tried to ruin me. They just confidently assumed I would never leave because I had always stayed. I always paid. I always fixed things. Not anymore. The house still remains standing because I built it, but it no longer belongs to me. And that is the pivotal lesson I finally understood. A week later, my phone suddenly flashed with alerts I didn't want. Chloe's face filled my screen, filtered beautifully, her hand resting on the banister I had personally installed. The caption read, "Our dream home." My thumb instantly froze mid-scroll. She wrote it as if I had never been part of anything. The post had received hundreds of likes. Friends, distant neighbors, people who had no idea of the reality behind those polished emojis. Dustin's comment was placed directly beneath hers. "Finally, ours." I immediately closed the application before I tossed the phone. But the silence that followed was not peace. It was humiliation rapidly hardening into razor-sharp precision. I drafted an email, polite, extremely cautious, and factual. "Please confirm immediate repayment of the full renovation balance within 30 days. I attached every single receipt. I even included a thank you at the end. It felt utterly ridiculous, like apologizing for bleeding out. A few hours later, Dustin responded. You're completely overreacting, Diana. This is family, not a financial business deal. Don't try to create drama here. I stared intently at those specific words. Family, not business. That exact phrase had been their device for trapping me over the years. It was their effective parlor trick, converting accountability into debilitating guilt. Then my father's post appeared on social media. Some people forget who exactly raised them. My mother commented beneath it with a praying hands emoji. I didn't cry this time. I didn't even bother to call them. I simply sat there, observing the predictable pattern unfold, like reading a blueprint I had long ago memorized. That night, Maya stopped by. She dropped her purse on my kitchen counter and immediately poured herself a cup of tea, acting completely at home. "Did you happen to see the post?" she asked. I just nodded. "Do you want me to write a brutal comment under it?" "No," I replied. "Let them talk all they want." She paused, studying my unnaturally calm demeanor. "You are too relaxed." "I am finished negotiating with ghosts," I explained. "The next time they require my attention, they can expect to read a formal legal notice." Maya raised an eyebrow skeptically. "You are serious about this?" I met her gaze directly. "I'm done trying to play fair." She smiled approvingly. "Good. Maybe it's time they actually pay for the structure you built." After she left, I immediately opened my laptop once more. There were no tears now. No hesitation whatsoever. Just raw data, concrete evidence, and precise timestamps. I gathered every single document, every email thread, every financial transfer I had ever made on their behalf. My fingers moved swiftly, finally possessing a genuine purpose. As I meticulously scrolled through folders labeled repairs and utilities, a new realization dawned on me. This wasn't about seeking retribution. This was about restoration. They had meticulously constructed a house of mirrors, shiny, fundamentally misleading, full of self-serving reflections that made them appear righteous. But mirrors cannot support actual weight. They inevitably shatter when pressure is applied, and I was absolutely done being their reflection. So I pressed the print button. The sound of the printer working was steady, methodical, and almost soothing. When the final page emerged, I stacked the accumulated evidence neatly and sealed the entire package in a large envelope. Tomorrow, they would receive my final gift, an itemized invoice, written entirely in cold, hard truth. The following morning, the atmosphere had that sterile sense of coldness that invariably follows a firm decision. I carried the envelope downtown to Evelyn's office. It was a glass-walled cube that smelled distinctly of ink, coffee, and calm, professional destruction. Evelyn did not waste a single word. "So, you are prepared to formalize the separation." "Ready," I confirmed. My voice sounded firm, like a final judgment. We sat opposite her desk while she reviewed the digital files I had compiled. Her pen moved quickly. Crisp clicking sounds echoed lightly in the silent room. "We will issue a formal written notice demanding repayment," she stated. "We keep the language factual, emotionally detached, and perfectly clear." "That is exactly my language," I agreed. By the time the final draft was completed, it read with the precision of a surgical scalpel. 30 days to repay the documented $400,000 in incurred expenses. Failure to promptly respond will result in immediate legal escalation. No accusations were made, no anger was expressed, only precision. When the email was sent, I felt something profound release in my chest. It wasn't simple relief, it was perfect alignment. I was no longer the one responsible for solving problems. I was the reckoning itself. 2 days later, Chloe responded, using her firm's official letterhead. I instantly knew it came from her. The tone was far too dramatic and performative to be anyone else. "Our client denies all presented claims. Any materials used were explicitly gifted. Furthermore, Diana Jennings is currently under investigation for unauthorized use of proprietary design templates." I read the text twice, very slowly. She had masterfully flipped the entire narrative, instantly turning their fraud into an attack on me. It was almost impressive in its sheer arrogance. I forwarded the entire document to Evelyn. Classic deflection, Evelyn responded immediately. She is attempting to make you doubt the solid ground you are standing on. That feeling is very familiar, I noted. It's the family's preferred trick. Evelyn looked at me curiously. I briefly explained the pattern to her. I described how any expression of love had always arrived bundled with financial debt. How loyalty had always functioned as a leash, disguised cleverly as a virtue. She nodded slowly, then leaned back fully in her chair. They genuinely believe it's love, Diana, she said softly. It is control. That is the fundamental trap of normalized cruelty. It hides conveniently behind terms like duty and tradition. You were meticulously trained to always keep them safe. Now you are learning the necessary skill of keeping yourself safe. Her words impacted me harder than any legal threat ever could. For years, I had terribly confused their blatant exploitation for true affection and their resulting silence for peace. I truly believed that being the dependable child made me inherently valuable. I didn't realize it simply made me consistently convenient. I walked the long way home through the light rain, the city lights flickering, reflecting everywhere across the wet pavement. Every single raindrop sounded like the perfect punctuation mark to a harsh truth I had willfully ignored for too long. That night, I sat by my window and made a new list, not of financial payments, but of harmful behavioral patterns. Things I had blindly forgiven, clear boundaries I had completely erased, and apologies I had felt compelled to make simply for existing. By the time I finished, the page looked exactly like pivotal evidence in a complex case I was finally starting to win. I folded the list carefully into my notebook. It felt like a solemn contract, signed between the person I used to be and the person I was actively becoming. Chloe's accusation did not scare me in the slightest. It clearly defined the battleground. She had chosen elaborate manipulation. I had chosen mathematics, and math is incapable of lying. Tomorrow, I would begin the complex process of tracing every single transaction they had ever been involved in. If this was going to escalate into a full war, I would fight it with extreme precision, devoid of emotion. This was no longer just family drama. It was crucial data. It was undeniable structure. It was the sound of distinct lines finally being drawn, irrevocably and straight. 2 weeks later, Evelyn called. Her voice sounded tight, the way lawyers speak before delivering bad news. "Diana, we found something," she said. "You need to sit down right now." I did not sit. I stood by the window, watching the rain streak the glass like data lines. "Tell me what it is." "There is a major loan under your name," she said. "A $500,000 green housing expansion. It was signed using your architectural seal." For a second, everything went thin. Only her precise, terrible voice remained. "My seal," I repeated. "Yes," she confirmed. "It's on every document." I looked at my desk. The real seal sat there, cold metal catching the light. I realized this was not an accident. It was deliberate fraud. By the time night fell, I was driving toward Willow Creek. The house looked foreign in the storm. Scaffolding covered the front. Lumber piles sat in the driveway. When I walked in, the air smelled like wet paint and crime. 2 men in suits stood by the dining table. Blueprints were spread out. They were my designs. Chloe turned, still smiling. "Diana," she said, too cheerfully. "Perfect timing." "What is happening?" I asked. She pointed at the plans. "Investors, we're expanding the property. You should be proud, it's your work." "My signatures are fake," I said. She shrugged slightly. "You always wanted the credit, now you have it." The men looked at each other. One cleared his throat. "Is there an issue?" "Yes," I stated. "There are many issues." I took out my phone and hit record. Chloe's smile didn't break. She leaned in close. "You think recording scares me? You built your life fixing messes. Go ahead and fix this one, too." Her perfume was sharp. It smelled like expensive confidence. I looked at her and felt only clarity. When I left, the rain had stopped. Streetlights reflected in puddles like open eyes. My phone held the evidence. My heart felt light, but not happily, like a rope that just snapped. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking one thing: All my life, I confused obligation with love. I thought being needed meant being important. It was always leverage, not love. I opened a new folder on my desk, the forged blueprint. I uploaded the recordings, the documents, the photos. I watched their lies take shape, line by line. The house they loved had become a crime scene, the place where their desire for easy money finally destroyed them. I was the witness this time, not the savior. The next day had that quiet feeling before a major event. By noon, Evelyn called again. "They are moving fast," she said. "The bank is working with investigators. They used your signature for the second mortgage. Agents are going to the house tonight." I didn't answer her. I was already driving back to Willow Creek. When I turned onto the street, the house looked smaller, damaged by the truth. 2 government cars were idling outside. Men in gray jackets stood under the porch light, holding documents. My dad stood in the doorway, pale and confused. Dustin paced behind him, phone shaking, voice cracking. "They say we are under investigation." "Why?" An investigator opened a file. "Forged documents, fraudulent loans. We need to talk to Chloe Cole." My mom was frozen in the hallway, holding the banister tight. "She's not here," my dad mumbled, trembling. I stayed hidden by the fence. I didn't interfere. I wanted to see them face the trouble they created. A minute later, Chloe's car drove up, headlights cutting the drizzle. She parked across the street unaware. I stepped out. "Chloe." Her head snapped up. She froze when she saw me. The calm look finally vanished. "What is all this, Diana?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You tell me," I said, my voice steady. "The fake mortgage, the stolen money, my license on your forms." Her jaw tightened. "You don't know anything." "I know enough," I replied quietly. "You used my family to fund your scam. You played them and me. The game is finished." Her eyes flicked toward the porch where agents were stepping out. The panic lasted a second, then she sneered. "They trusted me. That's their fault." I recorded her final words. Agents surrounded her car immediately. She didn't fight. She was silent. She just folded her arms and watched the world she built fall apart. Dustin ran out, shocked. "She's lying. Tell them she's lying," he yelled at my dad. But my dad was silent. The papers in his hand shook like a confession. My mom held the doorway, whispering prayers that sounded like apologies. When the cars drove away, the house was silent. Only the rain was making noise. A soft, desperate knock came to my door that night. I opened it to find my dad, soaked in the rain. His voice was raw. "We're losing everything, Diana. The bank is calling in the loan. Please, you have to help us." I stood still. I slid a folder across the table to him. It held my statement, the evidence, the confession, proof that I was innocent. "I did help," I said calmly. "I told the truth." He stared at me, mouth open, as I closed the door. Outside, the rain poured harder, cleaning the street. For the first time, I didn't feel responsible for fixing their mess. I felt free. 6 months later, my new office smelled like wood and paper. The walls were still bare, honest, waiting for new work. On the table were blueprints stamped with my studio name, Haven Collab. It was a nonprofit for women rebuilding after financial or family damage. Maya sat across from me, tapping her mug. "You realized you built exactly what you needed back then," she said. I smiled. Yes, I built the thing I couldn't find. We had finished our first job, redesigning housing for single mothers evicted due to loan fraud. The irony was clear. The system that hurt me now formed the base for helping others stand up. Sunlight hit the plans like forgiveness. I opened my laptop and looked at old spreadsheets, years of numbers that defined my worth. Mortgages, repairs, costs. Each line was a scar. I moved the cursor over delete. I paused briefly. Then I clicked. The screen cleared, no balance left. I leaned back and finally took a real, deep breath. The quiet was peace now, built on boundaries, not fear. Later that night, I wrote a simple note. It was a reminder to anyone who has been the fixer or the one who stayed too long. Choosing yourself is not cruelty, it is survival. You are not abandoning them. You are coming home to you. Maya read it over my shoulder and smiled. "That's the final sentence," she said. "For the video, for everything." I nodded. "Yes, it's time I told people the truth. If you had to walk away to save yourself, share your story below. Someone needs your courage."